Hi, this is Stephen Lacoste, Artistic Director of the A.J. Fletcher Opera Institute, and I'm going to take you through how we got a new rehearsal space. When the whole pandemic began and it looked like we were going to open up in the fall, I knew that space was going to be at a premium. I said, well, Fletcher Opera is a very small program, 7 or 8 people, 3 or 4 faculty members, so we could find a space off campus. When the provost office called me and told me to pursue looking for another space, I really had no idea to do it. So I called James Albritton, the founding artistic director of the Fletcher Institute and the current general director of Piedmont Opera. He has come back this last 2 years to be our music director part-time. I said, how are we going to find a spot? Well, luckily, he had worked with a realtor about 4 or 5 years ago to find the Piedmont Opera House where their offices are. And so she set about just finding spaces for us. And so this was the last space she told us about. It was downtown, and I looked at it and I thought, well, certainly the rehearsal space is big enough. I mean, there is a pole in the middle of it, but that happens in many places you rehearse. So that was not a reason not to get it. And then Jamie turned and started looking at the glassed-in offices where we're doing the coachings and the lessons. And he said, they could stand in the room. The pianist and the teacher can be out in the big room, and they can take their mask off, and they can stay in there for an hour and sing. We have an air scrubber in there, and we can rotate rooms, so somebody can be in the first room and the second rooms. What it enables us to do, number one, is that the singers can continue their vocal development and their musical development without being nervous about singing. And I think that's the biggest thing, because I didn't want anybody to feel like they couldn't sing, and I wanted it to be as safe as possible. And it's such a small group of people. It established cleaning protocols. When we go to stage, it's plenty big, and if we have musical rehearsals, we can put 2 people in the rooms. So I think all in all, it was a really good solution for this year to keep the training going. I'm very excited to see, once we start using it for staging and acting purposes, what that's going to look like.
Hi, my name is Jamie Albritton, and I am the music director of the A.J. Fletcher Opera Institute here at the University of North Carolina School of the Arts in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And I want to talk a little bit about our decisions during COVID-19 to keep the Fletcher Opera Institute rolling. When we were first faced with trying to choose repertory, my first thought was, okay, big stage, but social distancing. And we were all just learning about the need not for 6 feet of distance, but with us singers being super spreaders, we need to be more like 12 feet apart. And I immediately started thinking operas with small casts, operas with small orchestras even possibly, if there would be an orchestra at all, because it's a consideration for the entire school, not just for the Fletcher Opera Institute. So I started to put orchestral concerns aside and thought about small casts, small resources, and I recalled the fact that I had learned about salon operas in the middle of the 1900s. The great voice teacher Garcia had written for his students salon operas to be performed at his home by his students for the people that he invited to his home. And they were very successful, and I looked into them, and they were exactly the recipe we needed for COVID. It was challenging and rewarding music. It was advanced bel canto music. It was written by one of the greatest voice teachers of the century for his students. How could that be wrong for our students here at the Fletcher? And with only piano accompaniment and small casts, it met all the requirements for the safety we needed to take into consideration during COVID. So we elected for our first set of operas to do a double bill of 2 of Garcia's salon operas. In staying with the small casts theme, we thought, let's try to find something in the spring that might be able to involve some instrumental accompaniment. And I ran across an opera with 3 people in it, written by a composer that I had learned about when I was a kid, Gabriel Piernet. He wrote an opera called Sophie Arnoux that is about a singer. And I thought, well, how perfect is that? And the soprano is the singer, Sophie, and there's a baritone matin part, a rather high French baritone role, are the principal characters. Sophie has a maid, and the three of them sing this beautiful opera. It's a wonderful opportunity to explore language, because it really is a play set to music as much as it is an opera. So it's a great learning opportunity to work in the language in that way. And the last decision we made this year was the final opera to pair with Sophie Arnaud, and that is Ravel's L'Heure Espagnole. A little bit larger than the rest of them, a little bit more active than the rest of them, but in these COVID-19 times, we have to pay attention to the need for social distancing, the extreme need for social distancing on the opera stage. And so we will be very clever in our examination of these operas, indeed of all four of these operas. But we're excited to explore operas we would not have under normal circumstances, and it is one of the many twists and turns that all of us artists face during this COVID-19 period. But what we can count on is that there will be training and opera here at the Fletcher Opera Institute.
The A.J. Fletcher Opera Institute is committed to bringing opera and classical music to school-age children all over the state. Mr. Fletcher's mission was to expose all people to opera, and then he traveled throughout the country and throughout the state, bringing opera to people who would not normally have access to it. And so when the Fletcher Foundation decided that they wanted to put the Opera Institute back into a school, part of our responsibility was to perform minimum of 30 performances in counties between the Virginia state line and Raleigh over the course of a school year, presenting some kind of opera in English. So what we have done is we have taken shows that use operatic music, but oftentimes teach a lesson not only about music, but about being kind to others, or not being selfish, or how to handle a bully, etc. Well, this year, the city of Winston-Salem, along with Mercedes-Benz, we were going to do a big Beethoven celebration. And so part of that was, well, how could we bring the outreach into that? And so Jamie had this idea that we could use music from Fidelio and tell a story that isn't exactly the opera, but introduce people to Beethoven. I would write something that would be appropriate, that the kids could watch with their teachers or their parents from home. And then we would do a question and answer period afterwards, and the kids would Zoom into certain grades, and they could ask questions about opera or about singing, and they could really relate to the kids. And the teachers would be there to help kind of guide that conversation. So I wrote this piece called Beethoven Rocks, and I took music that Beethoven composed. There's narration that talks about Beethoven's life. It talks about the challenges that he had, the successes that he had. And then we take Fidelio and we tell the story of Fidelio, but we never see Fidelio or Florestan. We see it from the point of Jack and Marcy and Rocco, Marcy's father. And so it's a very cute story, but still teaching the kids about music, about voice parts, about what's a symphony, all kinds of things.
Beethoven had a lot of musical successes after he moved to Vienna. People paid a lot of money for his compositions. He wrote 9 symphonies, 32...
What's a symphony?
A symphony is a large musical work for orchestra.
Wow! Beethoven composed 9 of them?
Yes. I bet the kids out there even know some of them.
There's even a little tribute to the 1970s in there. For those of you who might remember Saturday Night Fever, there was a piece called A Fifth of Beethoven, and we even threw that in there.
This music lives today, it's cool, I don't care what you say. He's made me and great, and his music really is persuade.
There's the Moonlight Sonata, the Minuet in G, and then several numbers from the opera Fidelio, and ending with 2 verses of Beethoven's Ode to Joy, the Ninth Symphony, that teaches kids about peace, respect, and loving each other, and also the idea of social justice for all.
Joyful songs we sing together, raise our voices to the clouds. All our sisters and our brothers, join us now and gladness take our fears and doubts away.
It's very important for us at the Fletcher Institute, especially now, to make sure that everybody has a connection to live performance. And so by doing the talkbacks afterwards, they actually can talk to the people who are performing in a very safe way. Of course, nothing can replace being live in front of the school, but for right now, this is what we're doing, and we're very proud of what we've been able to do.